This summer has been a pretty crazy summer to start with. I think I feel like I've talked about Mateus Fernandez, I've talked about Morgan Rogers, and I think I try to limit the videos that are the transfer videos, especially when I'm just talking about rumors, to the important signings. And what I mean by important is what seems to be very likely, what seems to be strongly reported. And the one right now is Bruno Guimaraes. Firstly, on the player. I mean, come on. I don't. Do I need to talk about the player that much? I think anyone that's watched the Prem knows this guy is elite. Um, I think he's one of those players that I think he's a step up away from a world class title. I think this is one of those players that if he was playing at a big club for a while, he might be looked at as world class. At least that's my opinion. He's a pretty complete player in terms of the total package. Obviously, with being at Newcastle, you have less eyes on you, so he might not be as consistent as we might think he is. But man, every single time I've seen him play against us or one of the big teams, he usually impresses. Um, I think the news around the deal is very interesting, and I guess that's something I want to talk about. But there's probably a bigger point that I want to talk about afterwards. The deal seems interesting because there's rumors about his release, him having a release clause because they didn't get into the Champions League. There's rumors that's also not true. We've had a verbal offer, £55 million, rejected, which seems realistic, but apparently this release clause is 60 million pounds, and you would expect it, just like Thomas Partey, to probably have to be all paid in a lump sum. But who knows? We don't really even know if that exists. Not many credible journalists have talked about it. I think I've seen one or two journalists talk about it, but not, the Fabrizios, the David Ornsteins, the Hand of Arsenals in the world. And honestly, there was news about a second bid being expected, but I guess because it's the weekend, or I'm recording this on Sunday night, so it has been the weekend. Maybe news is just naturally slowed down. Honestly, I'm not too sure. But what I will say is this: I think the bigger deal or the bigger topic here is the players we're looking at, the profiles we're looking at, and eventually in the next few weeks, obviously the World Cup is kind of the center of what's going on on this channel right now. Like and subscribe to see that content. There's more content coming that's not World Cup related, but obviously right now, World Cup centric. Canada just made the round of 16. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the World Cup. Um, but at some point, we're planning on talking about what positions we want slash wanted at the beginning of the window, whether that's addressed or not. We're going to talk about the status of certain players and where our priorities lie in terms of transfers, in our opinion. But in relation to that, it's very interesting to see where Arsenal's transfers seem to lie in terms of priorities. Um, I think we've been most aggressive so far in the midfield market and the youth market, or the academy market, I would say. And what I mean by that is we've been very aggressive with players under 21 that our contracts are expiring in the next few days slash weeks. So that's very, very interesting. Jeremy Monga, for example, Mbemba. Um, there's the Spurs boy. There's the Fulham academy player. And there's one other that's not coming to my mind, but there's five or six. There's the Georgian, people call him the next Kvaratskhelia, but what does that really mean? Who knows? But apparently he's really talented as well. There's some negotiation with that as well. But beyond that, I think we haven't really been aggressive in the right back slash center back market. I think the only thing that we know is that Livramento was really convinced that he was going to sign for Arsenal. He's had a severe injury since, and so who knows what's going to happen with that. And then the midfield market, there's been lots of talk of Buwadi, and now there's lots of talk of Bruno Guimaraes. There was talks about Alex Scott here and there as well. Alongside Tonali, but Tonali looks like we backed out of because of his insane wages. But right now, all the talk is on Bruno Guimaraes. Um, And that just leaves me interested because what does that mean for our priorities? It seems like we really want a midfielder. Whether that's to compete with Zubimendi or start over Zubimendi, I'm not too sure, but we clearly want a midfielder that can compete with Rice and Zubimendi. Buwadi seems like more of a Rice profile, whereas Bruno Guimaraes seems like a mix, a blend of the two. I think he can play in that 8 role, he can play in that 6 role. I think him and Rice together would be insane. I don't think Bruno Guimaraes covers large spaces like Rice does, but I think he can help with that. But to me, he seems more like a Zubamendi upgrade. In my personal opinion, I think he's mentally more aggressive than Zubimendi is. That's in the duels. That's while when progressing the ball, etc. He seems just more aggressive, in a good way. Obviously that can lead to rash decision making. That playing at an elite club you would get sent off for, and you would get punished harsher than he has for Newcastle. For example, when he elbowed Jorginho in the face, but I think it's interesting to see our priority, and it doesn't seem to be a Rice backup or a Rice option, if I'm being honest, because yes, Bruno Guimaraes can cover large distances. Yes, Mateus Fernandes can cover large distances. Yes, Alex Scott can cover large distances, but three of the four midfield players that we've been talked about, or three of the five midfield players that we've talked about a lot, are 6/8 profiles that seem like they're more of a Zubamendi competitor slash replacement slash upgrade. Whereas I understand that role needing to be fulfilled, especially if they don't trust in Lewis Scully as much as we would like. But what's really confusing to me is, what about Declan Rice? Where is the? I mean, you can play Bruno Guimaraes and Zubimendi together, or Bruno Guimaraes and Lewis Scully, but I would still be kind of concerned about out of possession. Who's covering large spaces? How does that work? It would be slightly concerning to me. And Bruno Guimaraes can definitely do it better than the other players we have currently can in terms of that Rice role, but that is still a massive concern. And so at least question marks as to what is going on in terms of our profiling. Who are we actually trying to get in terms of profiling? I think also the other question it leaves is, it seems like we have a target fee, because Buwadi and Tonali were strongly linked. Tonali first, strongly linked to Arsenal. But it seems like, and those two seem like more like grass eaters. They eat up space for fun. Buwadi and Tonali. Even Bruno Guimaraes has an engine on him, but I see Tonali, he eats up space much more similarly to a Declan Rice in my opinion, and Buwadi for sure is in the mold of a Declan Rice. Even the way he tackles is a downgraded version of Rice. His box impact is less limited than Rice's, but if anything, Rice actually does have impact around the box, whereas Buwadi has no impact at the moment. But I think all that to say that I think there's a certain budget when it comes to what we want to spend in our midfield, because of, with Tonali, we were interested until we started seeing the fee 80 to 100 million. It looks like 275k a week, apparently, and it seems like we're no longer interested. The rumors with Tonali kind of have died down. What that makes me think is that we're looking more in the 70 million range tops for a midfielder, which is why maybe that Bruno Guimaraes is being looked at. Maybe he's the higher end of that budget. Maybe Buwadi was a strong target until now we're hearing 80 million to 100 million euro valuation. Whereas we thought, in January, for example, we thought we might be able to get him for 50. And then in summer it was supposedly 70, but now that seems like there might be a bidding war, it might go to 80 to 100 million euros. And then on top of that, apparently they want him back for a season on loan, which doesn't seem like something we would do given our squad balance at the moment. I don't think it makes sense. It's not smart fund allocation. So, and even you look at Alex Scott. Alex Scott's a 65. Apparently, lots of rumors about the valuation being 65 to 70 million pounds for Alex Scott. And and that, Bournemouth are trying to offer him a new contract, but we'll see what happens with that. All these factors rolling together kind of make me feel as though we have a budget of 65 to 70 million pounds, give or take, on the midfield, on that midfield signing. And that makes me wonder, why is that? Is that pre-sales? Is that we're assuming we're making a signing now pre a sale, and that's what we can spend in unless we sell a Odegaard, etc., etc. Then we can go and spend more or buy two midfielders. Is that the vision? Is the vision that we're going to sign two or three attackers and maybe a right back, and so our leftover budget is the midfielder? Are those two slash three the priority? Um, I'm kind of confused. And then even I think we talked about Solis, the left winger. I probably pronounced his name wrong. I apologize. And that deal has kind of gone dead. That was a 35 to 40 million pound signing, and that seemed like, oh, we're saving on a Trossard replacement ish because we're going to get, we're going to spend heavy on a starting left winger or starting forward and then a midfielder. So I'm kind of confused as to, or I'm kind of intrigued as to what is going on with Arsenal at the moment in terms of what are our targets, what are we actually aiming for, what are our main priorities. If you were to ask me, spoiler I guess for a future video, my main priority is a left winger, and not the type of left, not a Barcola Martinelli left winger, because Barcola is a elite talent. That's a Martinelli upgrade, but there's no point if we can't sell Martinelli. I feel like that's poor fund allocation. For me, it's a starting left winger in the Trossard mold, more pausa, more balls to feet, more of a technician at the left wing position, and then a nine. Assuming we sell on Gyökeres, which I would do, a nine, a starting nine that is either in more of a second striker mold that maybe can play off Havertz, um, or a pure nine. But I would say what looks like is on the market right now is a second striker nine type of mold, and that's perfectly fine. We have Havertz, we have Moreno who can play as the backboard for these players to play off of, so that's okay. I don't particularly mind that. Even if you're to sign Morgan Rogers, I don't really mind all that. It's just um that is a profile that seems like we're looking at. Um, I think my third priority would be a right back slash right center back hybrid. And what I mean a right center back, I would mean basically a Ben White, someone that can play as a central center back, but also be a quality right back. The problem is that that's very rare. Um, so my priority would essentially lie in a right back that can cover at center back as a central center back, or an out and out right back. Um, but I think that also depends on Saliba's fitness. We're hearing issues about Saliba and whether he has back injuries, etc., etc., which kind of means to me that, or which kind of seems to me that, okay, we might have to target a central center back instead of a right back and prioritize that central center back instead. And hopefully he can give us minutes at right back as well. So for me, that's where I'm looking, is that someone that can play central center back as well as right back. And I think right now in our team, it's really Saliba, Rice, maybe Ben White that can play that type of role. I don't really trust Gabriel as the central center back too much. And Mosquera cannot play that role. Um, and then fourth is the Rice midfielder, that Rice arc, that Rice prototype. I trust Zubimendi to bounce back. I trust Miles Lewis-Skelly at the moment to compete, but I don't trust either of them to replace Rice. So that's where Buadi comes in so heavily for me, is that is a player that can cover at right back, but also can rotate with Rice. So for me, Buadi is so key and why I wanted him so much. Um, so it's very confusing as to where Arsenal are going when I'm looking at my priorities, when I'm looking at where they're going. I mean, you're looking at Morgan Rogers, looking at Bruno Guimaraes. Those are probably the two strongest links I've stayed consistently. Um, so it's interesting. I'm kind of spitballing now, so I'll probably, wrap it up. But like I'm rambling a little bit, I feel like, but it's just a very interesting time as Premier League champions to make that next step to go back to back and try to win that Champions League. What are our steps? What is Bursa doing? What is Arteta thinking right now? To me, it seems like a second striker at the nine, like a second striker nine type of profile. Endrick, Alvarez, Krupi. It seems like a 10 slash left wing profile like Morgan Rogers that I don't know if you would play him at the 10 or left wing. I kind of mix. I think he looks like a Trossard upgrade, but at the same time, I'm seeing him in England in that right 10 position. I'm thinking in my head, he might want to play him there, um, alongside a second striker, and him be kind of like a Kai Havertz. That seems interesting to me, like an interesting proposition. Um, yeah, it's a very interesting time, and listen, I'm speculating and I'm speculated for so long. I don't even know how much time I've spent talking about Bruno, but it's a very interesting time at Arsenal. And all I can say is, let's hope that we get stuff over the line soon because I'm seeing Liverpool miss out on Diamande and now going for Barcola. And it's starting to worry me because we're moving worryingly slow. And it's early. It's only end of June. But come on. Let's make some signings. Let's go win this league again and win that Champions League.